Hey everybody, how you doing? How's your week? How's your day? How's the month? Everything going good with everybody? I hope so. I'm Steve Rosen. Hopefully you know me by now. I'm the one who keeps putting up all that very cool audio interview stuff from the interviews I've done, kind of dating back to, God, what is it, 73? So what you're going to hear today is actually one of the very first interviews I did, one of my very favorite interviews with one of my very favorite people in the world, Jeff Beck. Here we go. Right? Freeway Jam, people. So, so this was, I did this interview in May 73. I'd only been writing for a very short time, and I was given the opportunity to interview Jeff Beck, which was a dream of mine. I mean, the idea that I would ever meet Jeff Beck was just beyond my comprehension. So I sat and talked with Jeff. We talked for about a half hour, and he was wonderful and funny and informative. And I wanted to play the tape back just to make sure I was getting levels right, and there was nothing there. I'd forgotten to press record. You have to press record, people. I was so embarrassed I was almost afraid to tell him, but I had to tell him. He says, "Oh, it's cool, mate. Come back tomorrow." So I came back the next day. So what you're hearing is an interview spread over 2 days. So one of the pieces is actually the first piece, but it's actually the second piece from an interview. So anyway, you'll hear it, you'll dig it. So that appeared, that became my first story for Guitar Player magazine, which also became my first cover, December 73 cover. And about 4 years later, I wrote a book on Jeff that came out in Japan called the Beck book. And I was hoping it was going to be an authorized biography. I was hoping I could get Jeff on board, but he never wanted to commit. To make a long story short, it turns out that he didn't want me to do the book. He hated the book, even though he never read it. I turned out that he hated me, blah, blah, blah. So, well, there you go, man. Remember, the best laid plans of mice and men oft go astray, and no good deed goes unpunished. So, there you go. Jeff Beck, 1973. Check it out. Thanks, everybody. See ya. Peace.
One. Like I told you, I kind of recorded over the first part we talked about last time. I think we just start at the beginning. I just covered up the first 15 minutes of the talk. So could you talk maybe again about what it was like when you were growing up, and how you met Jimmy?
I grew up with Jim, I suppose. I wasn't with him all the time. I didn't live near him.
Right.
But we were only the same people around the same time. There was a handful of guitar players that most of the cats over in England were digging. Like the Gene Vincent's guitarist, Cliff Gallup, the fat guy of about 40. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of him.
Why don't you set the microphone on top of the television instead of holding it down? I don't know. That's what I usually do. It sets people off. Keeping it up. It's the interviews.
Where was I?
Fucking down.
Oh, God.
Howdy, Tim. Howdy.
Yeah, he was the only one that was playing really sharp, fast stuff. And Jim and I used to like him a lot.
And how did you first meet Jim?
Through my sister, really, because she went to an art school. And there was a cat at the art school who was into guitars. And he knew a guy that he wanted me to meet, because he heard through my sister that was wild at electric guitar. And in those days, there was not too many people that even knew what electric guitar was. So I went straight over there and met this guy. Both the guys, the one that told my sister about it.
Right.
The guy's name was Barry Matthews. and he was a freak for the guitar. He couldn't play it. He used to just draw pictures of it.
What kind of guitar is that? This guy.
Yeah, he made his own. It was disgraceful. Yeah, it had a horn up here somewhere, about 8 inches long, 10 inches long. Because he was an artist, and everything he saw was distorted in his own way. He used to draw strip cartoons of rock bands and things way back in about 1955. And then he said, "Come over and meet Jim, a friend of mine." And as a matter of fact, I already knew the guy. I already knew Jim Page, but not personally. I'd seen him play in a group called Neil Christian and the Crusaders. And because they were playing with us, I had a gig or one job at a weekend. It was a big moment, going around and playing. And Pagey was sort of raving around with a big Gretsch country dimple. And it looked so big on him, because he was a shrimp. But even smaller than he is now. And all you saw was this sort of guitar being wielded around, by a pipe cleaner man. And he had a guy in the group who had an oval bass drum, Trixon, triangle with 2 pedals. So he was using 2 bass drums. And I was most impressed with this guy. He used to play really fiery, sort of fast stuff. And nobody was listening. They all wanted to hear Bobby Darin and Dream Lover and all that.
He was playing like that way back then?
Yeah. No, not funky at all. It was just sort of having a gila, terrible. But it was impressive.
Yeah. Yardbirds was the first professional group you were in?
Yeah, that was all through Jim, really. I'd go and see him sort of once a month or once a week. Sometimes we'd knock around for 3 or 4 days in a row.
Right.
And just get off on where one another was in music, He used to play me rare singles that he'd got from Sun records and stuff, unreal collection. And everybody that I knew was always trying to get over to Jim Page's to hear his records. And
was he offered the job first in Yardbirds?
yeah, he was offered the job because he was around London. I never went to London, I hated it. Every time I went up there it was a pain in the arse. I wouldn't even go there to buy a guitar.
You from the south?
Yeah, just south of the river, south of the Thames. I'm a foreigner, I'm not really at London. Anyway, he was out and about and much before I was, and just on the scene long before I was. And he told the guy, the manager of the Yardbirds, that I was interested in the job. He wasn't interested because the money wasn't anything like he was getting doing sessions. And it didn't seem like a good idea to leave what he'd built up to me. And it sounded like a good idea to me because to play in the Yardbirds because I was just doing nothing, earning no money, couldn't even afford to buy strings.
Then after you were in it for a while, he kind of wanted to get in.
Yeah, he realised that, wow, I helped this fucker out.
Didn't you play bass for a while?
Yeah.
When was that?
Well, Samuel Smith left the group for production. It was an ego trip for production. And he couldn't produce an egg and spoon race. Well, he could now, maybe, but that was 6 years ago.
So how long were you and Jim in together?
The Yardbirds were doing fine up until Samuel Smith started getting a bit snobby. And I realised that if he left, we were going to lose a very serious, very sort of integral part of the sound, very important member. So we had to think of who was going to replace him. And I thought, well, I don't know any bass players, so we'll make up for that with another lead guitarist. And I immediately got onto Jim, and he didn't have any idea why he was being asked in the group really. And we had to talk to him and bribe him with lots of money to come in the group, but he really wanted it anyway, and I could see that. Otherwise he wouldn't have consented to have dinner and an agreement sort of appointments and stuff.
What was his style back like before you met him? Was it like it is now?
No, it was session style, very, very melodic and nice. I really liked the way he played it. he was always playing snazzy licks that no one else was. And that's when he was really playing Jim Page.
How long was Clapton?
In the Yardbirds, he was in the early stage of the Yardbirds. For about 63 to 65. When they very first started, they went through a whole change with different members, different drummers. It wound up with Jim, Chris, Eric, and Keith, and Paul Samuel-Smith. He used to play a fretless bass. It's a homemade thing, it was really good. And then the Page thing, we got him off bass guitar because Chris was a dreadful rhythm guitarist. He couldn't keep time. He was alright. I mean, for recording, he'd remember what he had to play and just play it. But on stage, he wasn't really playing a really important part. If he went sick or something, it wouldn't be any big deal. And I just felt that it was a passenger. It sounds really mean because he was in the group before I was. But when Page got on lead guitar, we had great possibilities in the band. Because no one else had two players that thought the same.
What were the first reactions to you and Page playing with you?
Oh, it was great. It's like, brainstorms every night.
Did you try to show each other out and stuff on stage?
Yeah.
Who usually won?
It wasn't a question of winning, We were both the same volume.
Was that the last
And the
time
volume,
you
if you're talking about volume, or just generally shutting each other down playing, didn't come into it because we used to plan the solos, not musically, and not note for note, but the idea I'd do a verse and he'd do a verse and we both finish up together in harmony. And sometimes it's chaotic. That wasn't the idea to outgas each other.
I think that's one of the reasons the Yardbirds might have been considered ahead of their time. Integrated two guitars.
I don't know why the Yardbirds always sort of made it a feature of guitar. They always had to have a guitarist that was, in Eric's sort of field, because I suppose he gave them the name. That's all I can think of.
When you came into the group, did you in any way try to emulate what Eric had done?
No, this is what I was afraid of. I hated the first few weeks playing in the band because Eric had a strong following. And if you ever tried to set yourself in his position, or a person who had a good following. But there was no problem. I mean, the Marquee was a debut gig. And I'd really been practicing so hard, I thought this, because I wasn't that knocked out with Eric's playing at that time, He was doing kind of this sort of, that was okay, it was powerful, but he had no kind of electric rock sounds coming out. They were all kind of blues and just simple rhythms, and then build-ups and sort of, all that kind of shit. You wind up here just on the same chord, and everyone was going, "Wow, man!" They thought that was really sharp, that sort of build-up.
Was he playing the Summers back then?
No, he played a red Telecaster. Yeah.
Did you have one?
And I borrowed it off him, for a while, and I just hated it. It was terrible. It was all beaten up.
What kind of guitar were you playing?
I had a yellow Telecaster.
Is that the one you're using on the cover of Rave Up? It's a picture.
Yeah, that's it.
So, how soon after leaving the Yardbirds did you start thinking about putting your own group together?
It was a bad time in my life, because part of the reason I left the Yardbirds was exhaustion and illness and one thing and another. Just generally fed up with the way that promoters treated the bands. And I couldn't see any immediate change in their habits. And the group just wanted to come over and work more and more in the States, and I wanted to work less and less. And I got involved with this chick, and fucked a good part of my life, And while I should have been working and really seriously getting down to it, I was messing around on the beach and stuff like that.
Was the Yardbirds the last group that you played in with two guitars?
Yeah. Never used a rhythm guitar after that. And I realised during the Yardbird period that if I was playing my job properly, a rhythm guitar wouldn't be needed.
Right. So how did you kind of meet up with Bud and Ron and
I always had my finger on players, every musician around London knew what the other one was doing. And we made it our business. All groups used to come and see each other play, and it was really nice. At the time it was like, we thought we were sneaking in.
The plane is done.
The plane is alright.
Hello.
That was, hi.
No, it's quiet.
Fine.
Magnus from San Diego.
There seemed to be a purpose, it was like a competition. Hey,
We're not going
we've got a
down.
so-and-so here. Yeah, right, well, we're going to do this. They're doing that in their act, well, we'll have to cut that out. It was just great fun, like nice hot competition, but constructive moves were being made, and I really liked the
I'll be in
music
my room
scene
if you
then.
want me, okay? 10.
And then, what happened after that? Oh yeah, I had to round up a singer. And I just couldn't think of it again. And I always liked Rob. I always dug him. Everybody sort of said he was a faggot. And, he was like a Long John Baldry's boyfriend. That was the thing that I had to shake it off, kind of the teeth hair and all the rest of it. But it wasn't like it is now. It was kind of curled under at the back. And it was just like a piece of sort of moulded fiberglass. Looked like he put a helmet on, really, it was so bad. And I said, Rod, please, get rid of that fucking hairstyle.
Who was he working with at the time? Anybody?
No, he was out of work then. He was in a club called the Cromwellian, just hanging around, waiting for someone to pick him up. And I asked him if he wanted a job, and he said, yeah, you're joking, I don't believe it. You ring me tomorrow and say it, and I'll believe you. And I was more sober than I've ever been that night. And I couldn't believe it. He said yeah, because I thought he was a snob, and and things just started to really roll. His voice was just amazing. In those days, it's amazing now, but in those days it was superb. So much overtone and raucous sort of. It was warm and it was raucous and it was everything all rolled into one. And when he sang a blues, it was just moving, really beautiful.
You think that's the best work he's done back then?
Yeah, I reckon. It was with a little bit more finesse. He could have been one of the finest singers around. His pitching was a little funny because he hadn't had training. His breathing, if you're going to start singing heavy stuff and use your voice to the maximum, you must have some advice and some training. But he wasn't ready to listen. I daren't tell him he was out of key. He'd walk off and just fuck off and never come back. Because when we recorded All Shook Up, there's a bit where it sort of goes. From the G it goes, and it goes, there's sort of weird changes, with a G sharp with a fucking B flat bass, and he couldn't understand it, because he never had that before, and he was still singing in the key of G, and no one really sort of had the nerve to tell him that he was out of key, and seeing him, my chick came in and said, fuck, who's that singing out of key, and he just hated me, and he hated my chick ever since then. And that was a bad period because Mickey Most was handling all the sessions then, and he really didn't know what was going on, and Rod wasn't satisfied with the bread singing, so that broke up.
What was, how'd you find Mickey and Lon?
At the time, they were just good enough to get me off, I could get off and they'd always be right behind me, without trying to be stars, And with Rod and me in the band, there wouldn't have been room for a drummer that was a kind of show off or anything like that. And there wasn't one around anyway. I always wanted a drummer that could really sort of show.
He's a good drummer.
He is a good drummer. He had mental hang-ups, so that was why he never actually sprouted into a really first-rate one.
So he was kind of a small guy and you kind of get tense.
Yeah, he had this inferiority complex.
Hopkins went to this big thing a couple of years ago in the summer. The style of music, as you know, people really music. It sounded just about the same style as you guys do, knew before that. Did very many people ever think that when the group was billed as Jeff Beck group and Rod was singing, they thought maybe he was Jeff Beck as he was singing?
Yeah, even the Columbia promoters thought, the guys
Didn't know.
they said we always knew that Beck would make it. By the way, who's the fellow on guitar? They did. I've got those words still ringing in my ears.
I read this someplace.
That's great, dude. You were together a year before you decided to put together a truth.
Yeah. Yeah, because we were getting a whip crack from the management, you know, because we were drunkards in those days. I mean, we were so sort of anti, what should we call it, flash and anti-showy, you know, like just being on the stage was tough for us because it, you know, it kind of reminded us of the kind of gigs we were playing where there were small stages and we'd walk on. It was like a puppet show, you know. You felt like a fucking sort of display, you know, or sort of an animal show. And we'd wheel on the product and wheel it off. And that was horrible. I didn't like the media sort of assembling on stage and people watching, you know. And we were always throwing fun at the audience, you know, in sort of defence of this feeling we had. So we'd get drunk and not even organise a show. And Mickey saw this and he said, "This is no way to go. You better organise yourself." And I said, "Fuck it, you know, I've got my own little thing I want to play. And if people turn up and want to hear it, then, you know, they won't mind how it's presented." And we were just getting bigger and bigger audiences and things were going well. And then Hendrix came along and then, you know, it was kind of hard to grapple that fucker, you know. All those little teeny boppers and the chewing gum types and the hitters and everything, you know, they were all saying, "Hey, Hendrix is the best," you know, heckling and all. I said, "Ah, fuck off," you know. You just had to get on the best. Because I got paranoid sometimes. Rod would get even more paranoid. And we came to the States and everything just shaped up, you know. Rod found his feet when I took him to the States. Because he could no longer hide behind anybody. He just had to get out there and face it. Big places, big people, you know, big crowds. And a lot of money was starting to come along. And I said, "Rod, this is going to, you know, this is going to pay off all the work we've done." And he just couldn't see it. I think he was a bit frustrated. He wanted to be the soul, you know, the actual star of the show.
Who's still doing that all year?
No, just anything we Buddy Guy, a couple of wolf things. Oh, just anything that we fancied. I used to usually come up with a number, and Rod would put an enlarge on it and just come up with a few ideas. For bars and, you know, changes and stuff like that he wanted to put in.
So both of you would arrange it then?
Yeah.
You were him.
Mickey never did any arranging, and Ronnie just never had any ideas, but he just liked to be told what to do and then just do it.
Mickey really wasn't in the group for Truth and was officially in it for Beckola?
No.
No?
Yes, he was. Yeah, he was in the group then.
How did you meet Mickey?
Pagey got me a session once, and he was on the session as well. He just recovered from hospital, out of hospital. I don't know, he had some terrible operation. And he was like a rake. And he could only play. The first time I met him was in the Beck's Bolero session. He played piano on that. And then I thought, well, if we could only take this little band on the road, we'd be made. JPJ on bass. And Keith Moon on drums. And I believe that there was talk about forming a group then. I think Keith Moon was pissed off with the Who. That was going to be the original Led Zeppelin, I think.
Right.
I think they still have any hope.
Is it?
Blues Deluxe was recorded at the studio.
Yeah. But we were messing around with some sound effect tapes while I was waiting for Rod to turn up. And I had this room presence tape where there was like a 5,000-seater auditorium with just the sound of people coughing and noise and amazing sort of echo sound, you know, without anybody actually saying anything. You could hear. You just felt you were in a room, big room.
Did you ever listen to Les Paul? His record,
Yeah.
Music Engineering.
Yeah, great.
Pick out any of his notes.
Yeah.
What are some of the ones that you
Yeah, this sort of shit. You know, they're sort of it's effective and it's pretty hard, pretty easy to play.
Did Page write Expo specifically for you?
No, he didn't write that song. We sat down in his front room once, little tiny pokey room it was. He'd sit on the arm of a chair, and he played. Oh yeah, right. He played this rhythm. Yeah. That's right. And he had a 12-string guitar, and it sounded so full,
Yeah.
really fat and heavy, you know. And I just played the melody, and I went home and worked out this middle bit. That bit.
It's so heavy, I love that.
And then we couldn't really sort of get off on that, just that change, so I pushed it up to C.
You went to D&E.
That's what really made that.
Yeah. Then it comes up to, so, yeah. It goes from the E down to the D with the E bass. And with Mooney just thrashing away, he broke a mic on that session. If you could listen closely, you can hear him hit the mic and he goes,
Moon's
like that.
on that?
Yeah. That's
What part of the song is that where you
at the end. Right at the end. The mix goes all over the place there because his mic's swinging around on a bit of wire and it's picking up my guitar. It was just outrageous vandalism. You can hear things breaking.
And that's on the record.
Yeah. But the mix at the end is terrible because the low note that is on a fuzz and it just comes out too much. It drowns out the drums and bass. Because John Paul Jones has got a really good line in that. And that sort of... something like that.
Wow.
It's just perfect.
Did you smash your guitar at the end of your shipment?
Yeah, I just whopped it straight in.
Did you ever stick the head right inside the speaker?
Oh, many times I used to do that.
Why you destroyed the guitar?
Well, because I was a hot little fucker then, you know. I used to get really bad tempered.
Did you used to be with the Yardbirds?
Yeah, a long time ago. Oh, about 6-7 years ago. Once I just rammed it straight in the speaker and it stayed there. But then Townsend came along and did the whole thing, you know, with fire and everything, smashing up strats by the 100, you know.
You did it after you?
But but the thing is, nobody saw me do it really. I was just playing in small clubs then.
I saw them blow up.
Yeah. Well, that was after they got the thing off the ground, you know, with smashing your guitar. They did the some Brooklyn Fox thing they did. Big show there at the Brooklyn Fox.
The box paid to use those amplifiers, or did you like this one?
What? Yeah, we got sponsored by Fox. That was the only name that meant anything until Marshall came in.
What was your favorite amp?
Oh, I didn't have one. I just hated all the amps because they were all burning up.
Really?
Oh, that was the worst problem.
When did you get wired into a Sunburst Les Paul? How did you find out about that?
I think Eric put me onto that. You know, I like the sound he got.
Yeah, it does have a very perfect sound for a song like
Yeah. I went to see him in Cream and that's what turned me on.
He was using one back with John Mayer, wasn't he? Eric?
Oh, right, sorry, yeah, it was John Mayer, not Cream. That's right. I forgot that little period he was with Mayer.
Look, if you think you're going to twist them, Laura, with the Japanese paper, which is important.
It's alright. Getting used to it. You ain't going to get this back.
Where did you find Tony Newman in the second album?
Well, I always knew about him. I said before, most musicians around that time, I knew everywhere.
Isn't that same?
Everyone would, yeah. Oh no, he wasn't in the friendship thing. You know, I just knew about the group called, what was it called? Sounds Inc. They backed the Beatles at Shea Stadium. You remember that gig?
Yeah.
There was a group that opened up, Sounds Incorporated.
Yeah.
They warmed up the audience for the Beatles at Shea Stadium. And he was a right little tearaway, you know. Terrible thrasher. Loud as hell and real exciting, you know. And then when I auditioned him, I hadn't seen him for about 4 years. And I walked down this little audition room and it was this fat cat singing on the drums. He looked totally different. He was blonde when I saw him before and he'd gone dark brown, you know, and had a sort of leather mac on, you know. I said, who the fuck is this? You know, he said, I'm Tony Newman. Anyway, he sort of liked what we were playing. And he said, oh, look, when I get into this, I'll really get it good. And he went home and practiced for about 2 months. Got it really nice. It was alright, but the thing is, he wasn't anywhere near up to the stage presence of Baker and people like that. Now, if that's the sort of competition that one had to get a hold of. Yeah.
Did you feel that you had to compete with Cream?
Well, of course. I mean, because I had a similar kind of name as they did. As Eric and Jimmy and. But they just made the best move group-wise. I just fucked about and wasted time. I couldn't take it as seriously as they did. That's probably what it was.
It's like you really found your car or something.
No, it wasn't that. I didn't have anything else really I was interested in, but I just could not understand how somebody could go all out and just make such a big thing about it. A few licks in the kitchen and, impress your friends and that's it.
Right. So when you started playing, you never realized that it mushroomed into what it is now?
No, God, no, I didn't.
If you could have seen this happening, would you still stay in it?
Yeah, I would have worked my balls off. I would have got it right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have wasted time. But I might be wasting my time doing something now. I mean, something might be passing us both by right now.
What caused the Jeff Beck group to finally break up?
Which one?
The person with Rod and his 20s and
Rod didn't like working here, and I didn't like working here, and there was a real ugly thing with his old lady, which I don't know if he knows about, but there was one time when Paige and I used to go around and we used to do all sorts of wicked things to women.
Did you?
Yeah, we used to know every wicked bird there was in London. Talk about it. You'd get off on it. And one of these chicks was Rod Stewart's bird, long before the group ever started. And when Rod found out that we had this terrible, deal with this chick, he just didn't like me anymore. She was really loose, but got really tight with Rod, but before that, he had no idea what she was like before that. And that kind of upset, he couldn't work with me, knowing that had gone on.
Did Mickey Mouse have something to do with you breaking up?
Yeah, he played a pretty big part in fucking things up. He wasn't ready to listen to me because he had a lot of gold discs and I didn't have any.
Right.
And I had to just do what I was told, otherwise I wouldn't get anything released at all. Hence, Love is Blue and Tallyman.
I was talking with Cameron Crowe, who talked to you the other day, and he was saying that Nicky never really got the pay that he was due in the group.
Nicky did?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that, because I never got mine.
He was saying that you really never felt it. Do you mind if I hold this?
No.
No, I'm gonna miss it. When did you start to think about putting the second Jeff Beck group together with Tench and Middleton?
Just about the time when I just got bored with convalescing from my crash. That crash was a bad thing.
Exactly.
And I wasn't beaten up by skinheads, whatever they say.
Oh, I never heard anything. All I heard was a car accident.
Yeah, one article said, believe what you want, but rumour has it he was beaten up by some skinheads. Wrong. That's wrong. Skinheads don't exist anymore.
Don't they?
No, they went out all ages ago.
Were you in a vet?
No, I was in a hot rod, one of my own compositions. And a tyre burst on me when I was going along. It was really early in the morning, and there was a sort of wet film on the roads from the dew,
Right.
And well, it was terrible. I just went along, and the thing just went right across the road.
How long were you in the hospital?
Not long, but with a skull fracture, you have to stay there for 48 hours, intensive care. They put you in, they watch you all night and see if you're having any funny spells. I had a busted nose and my face was completely slashed to pieces, but my back was the thing that was killing me more than anything, and they weren't bothered about that. They x-rayed me, after I got into hospital. No problems there, but that was the thing that was bugging me. And I complained about it, and they said, okay, well, we'll have another look at it. And they found that the small tissues had been pinched, and it was just killing me, and I had to stay there for 3 weeks. Just straight on my back, just absolutely with a board, with a board. And I just felt like death, I wanted to die, I looked in the mirror and I thought, oh Christ, I'm never going to be able to walk out in the street again, My nose was 2 inches off centre, and you can't straighten it until
Sure.
you can't touch it. You're just gonna bandages all over. Terrible. And then here I am now, like there's not a scratch on me. It's amazing.
So where'd you find like attention, Middleton, and that?
When I got out of that, everyone thought I'd died and got sort of washed away in the sea or something. So I realised that money was running a bit short, and I thought, well, get out there and mingle, see what's happening. Went to see the Faces, and that was the worst show I've ever seen. It was one of their first gigs, and there was about 400, 250 or 300 people, and I was just ashamed to be standing in the same building, because people started to recognise me. Say, whoa. And I just got out, and my chick and I went home, and I said, well, if that's what's going on, let's take another couple of months off, Why go out? Because every time I played or went near a loud place with discotheque music or something, I'd get a headache. I kept having these recurring headaches. Terrible. And I just was so mellow, I couldn't give a shit. I was wandering around with drugs, to keep me out from pain. And most of the time, I was just sort of oblivious to the music scene. And one day I just started picking up the guitar, and I realised I couldn't play a note. Could not play a note. And I just frightened and I put it down again. Tried again in another couple of weeks, and it was just worse. And I thought, this is all ridiculous. I've got to stop playing. And once I got back into shape, I started looking for players, and got hold of Bob Tin and Cozy Powell, and it the whole story that involved. I looked as hard as I could all around the place. Phoned up. I went to Negro areas, nearly got beaten up, waiting for these non-existent cats that had rung up, said they want a job. But I was really interested in black musicians at that time, because I thought, well, in my record collection is 90% black artists. Why go out and get a white band? And Clive Chapman is a fantastic bass player. I mean, you listen to some of the stuff as a bass player, and it's just really nice. He wasn't an innovator of any hard bass licks like the guys on the Atlantic and the Motown labels, but he could certainly hold his own against them any time. From where he came from, I mean, that just rhythm, just born with rhythm.
He had kind of long auditions for drummers too, and it seems for Cozy, that was it.
Cozy was easy fella to get on with, and he looked cute and could play pretty nice, Well, not
look alike.
Yeah, oh, not really.
No.
No.
How did you get involved with the work with Donovan? Yeah, one or two tracks.
I was just bored at home, and Mickey knew I had a few days off before leaving for another tour, and he said, "Why don't you come over and play on fancy a Donovan session? It's got a couple of nice tunes." I said, "Yeah, all right." And it sounded a good idea putting the thing out as a dual heading, on the label, and it worked. It was a real big hit for him. I liked the record. Grabber Jackal, yeah. Right.
Have you done any other recordings that maybe haven't been released? Obscure little things?
Yeah, several little things.
Yeah.
I keep them to myself.
Yeah. You said once that you did a performance at the Fillmore East, and you thought that was a really important performance. You thought you got something settled there.
Well, we'd heard lots about the wonderful flower power of San Francisco and all the rest of it. But when immediately we hit the stage, people knew that there was no hanky-panky, there was no hype. And they just took us in, and we felt that we belonged to the, San Francisco scene.
Right.
And Rod and me wrote a song at the end of a 6-day period there, up to Fillmore.
What song was that?
It was a blues dedicated to Bill Graham and the Fillmore, and the whole thing, and the words were just incredible. None of them rhymed, and it was just a humble effort. We wrote it on the back of a piece of toilet paper, a big sheet of toilet paper, and the kids just, I've never seen them anything like it. They thought that was just about right, and they were just jumping up and down, before we even started, because they liked the idea of us writing the song for them. They all stood up straight away. They all stoned out of their brains, and absolutely, if they practiced it for 10 weeks, they couldn't have got it. just up like that, and that was really the most moving thing. But they'd been good audience, you know. Aside from that, I mean, that wasn't just a good point about the thing. The whole 6 days there, you know, was building and building. First night, it wasn't very good because nobody was aware of what we were putting down, you know. And Janis Joplin was there a couple of times, Sly, and we began to play to their audiences, you know, and it was great because I don't think we'd have done any business if we hadn't had somebody that's powerful as them there. But as soon as they drew these big audiences and we had to play to them, we started pulling things out of the bag.
I think that covers what I stupidly covered up. Now could we start talking about you and the guitar? Okay. What's the first guitar, you know, that you ever got hold of?
A friend of mine had a guitar, and we were beating up old acoustic thing. Had about 1 string on it, and that's all I needed because I couldn't use it anymore. You know, 1 string was plenty for me to grapple with, and that broke. And where were we going to get another one from? I don't know. I used bits of old piano wire and stuck it on.
You made your own guitars and things?
Yeah, I made a guitar. The first one I made was out of a piece of cigar box, and then I progressed onto that. Cut out the front and the back out of plywood and made and steamed around the sides. You know, made some thin wood and steamed around the edges. Glued it all together. My old man threw it out in the garden because I had a row with him. Took the whole thing and threw it out in the garden. Rusted it. And I had so little money. You see, that was the thing. I wanted to do so much and didn't have any money. This was the thing. And I'd go down to the shop and wait till the place was pretty packed out. And I'd just whip one of these pickups right out of the shop.
Did you? That's great.
It was about £2, this pickup. That's about $6, something like that. And, oh boy, I couldn't have cared if I had thrown in jail for 6 months. I had my pickup, and there was a little hole cut in the guitar that had been waiting for that pickup for about 8 months. And it fitted perfectly because I'd already got the dimensions from a plan.
Right.
And it just slipped in there with 2 screws, and that was it. Boy, I was a king. And I used to deliberately carry my guitar around without a case so everyone could see what it looked like. Used to ride a bike with it. Stick it on my back and ride a bicycle. I could see then that it wasn't, you know, just a fly-by-night thing, because the expressions on people's faces when they saw this weird guitar, that was something else. It wasn't something boring like a violin, you know, or sort of sax in a very stock-looking case. It was bright yellow, bright fucking yellow, this guitar, and all these wires and knobs on it. People just freaked out. And I got my first gig at a fairground somewhere. Just boogied around there with it. Playing Eddie Cock and stuff, and nobody was into it. It was all past.
How old were you about that time?
Oh God, I really can't remember. There were so many changes going on. I can't even be accurate to even 3 years.
Did you ever have any training or lessons?
No, not on the guitar. Well, I went for one lesson on Spanish guitar, because there was rumours going around my school that you couldn't possibly play any guitar, any electric guitar, unless you had proper classical training. And I was a bit thick then, you know. I said, right, okay, where do we start? And went straight up to the guy, straight up to him, and he knew less than I did. I said, now listen here, you know, if I'm going to get on, I better just leave and go home. Because he didn't even have the bar chords right, you know. I'd read up before my first lesson. I'd swatted up, and I'd learned a few shapes and stuff. And I was expecting this man to teach me just everything, you know, in a couple of minutes. And he said, right, now practice this. And no playing, he just said, practice putting your finger across there. And I went like that. I said, right, where do we go now? He said, well, that's it. I want you to go away and practice that for a week. I said, well, I want to at least hit the strings once. No way.
That's great. You used a Telecaster, the first guitar you used at the Yardbirds?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And then there was a group called the Walker Brothers.
Walker Brothers.
Yeah. Do you remember them?
Yeah, vaguely.
they came over. They were very sweet-looking LA kids. You know,
Right.
one was a real smoothie with blonde curly hair, and his brother used to play drums. And there was Scott Engel, who wasn't the brother, but he looked more like the other kid's brother than the drummer did. So this who was his name? Scott. John Walker. There was John and Scott Walker and Gary Walker. And it was John Walker who had an Esquire that I really fell in love with. He sold it to me for $75. And because it had a blonde neck and a black finger plate, it was just one of the most sought after guitars in England at that time. All the guitar freaks, hey, you know, they'd all been putting on the black scratch plate, but they didn't have the blonde neck to go with it. And I had the blonde neck. I was in cat's whiskers again. And I'd been playing this Esquire, and I just got to grips with it, and gave my other Telecaster the Pagey. So he used to play that. He had it painted all psychedelic, and he has a silver finger plate on it, scratch plate.
Were you using any fuzzes or boosters or anything with the Yardbirds?
Yeah, I used to have a fuzz box. I had a fuzz box, and that's all. No other attachments.
What kind of amps were you using with the Yardbirds?
Had a Vox AC30 for the greater part of the time I was with that group. And then after that, when we came over here, we realised that one AC30 was not going to be adequate. Mind you, some of the places we played, that probably would have been the best move, because the louder the guitar, the less you heard of the drums and everything else. So at least it was balanced, you know, the thing that was in context with the rest of the sound of the group. But then we found that supporting groups have got banks and banks of amplifiers piled up. 3 Super Beatles hooked together, you know. But you know, I had that once at a big festival, and it made the front page of a paper. This crazy lunatic had got 400 watts of amp hooked together. That was at the Richmond Jazz Festival.
You were there?
Yeah, I was there. I played in the Yardbirds. That was electric. That was really amazing. I remember that.
Because like the thing was known more for jazz than rock.
Yeah, but the thing was that you could tell everyone was a little bit cheesed off with the, you know, trad jazz. It just added a little bit of, what should we say? Just gave the whole jazz thing a little bit of a poke, you know, like, hey, there's a rock band on. Just, you know, made the evening complete. And then people started talking more about the one rock band as opposed to the 10 jazz musicians that were on. Did you see 10 Years After? Yeah, they were great. Yeah. How about Chicken Shack? Yeah, but what about the jazz players? Oh, they didn't get a mention. It was a bit depressing.
What was your first experience with feedback?
Well, that was unavoidable because playing in small clubs, you're always getting feedback because of bad systems. And, you know, really the electrical thing hadn't been sewn up. You know, all the amps were underpowered and screwed up full volume and always whistling. And my amp was always whistling. And I'd kick it and bash it, and you know, a couple of tubes would break. And I was playing largely on an amp with just one output valve still working. And it would feed back, and I decided to use it rather than fight it. You know, it was hopeless trying to play a chord because it would just. So then, when I progressed onto a bigger amp and I didn't get feedback, I rather missed it. You know, I'd rather, you know, went to hit a note and there was no distortion,
Right.
too clean. It was horrible. So the ideal thing was to get the beauty of the feedback, but controllable feedback.
Right. Had Eric been using feedback?
No. I never heard it.
When you smashed guitars, it was more out of frustration or anger than as
Yeah, the amp
to a
used
theatrical.
either the amp was blown up, or my guitar was out of tune, or Keith was coughing and spluttering on stage. He used to use a respiratory spray,
Yeah.
and right in the blues solo you could hear this with this respiratory thing. You know. Oh Christ! I mean, there's nothing more frustrating than going on with so much to say and so much in your mind and not being able to put it out. There's only one way out: break that guitar.
How many guitars did you break at the Yardbirds?
I never broke them. You can't break Fenders. I mean, unless you swing them around full blast. I used to just give angry little jabs at the speaker, and if it completely went up in a cloud of smoke, I was happy. But if it just stayed there stubbornly, I wouldn't move, and it was still crackling at me, I'd give it some stick.
When you formed the first Jeff Beck group, you changed to Les Paul.
Yeah.
Was that from hearing Eric with
Yeah, with the Blues Breakers.
What differences did you find?
The difference was the amazing quality of the instrument. The Fender's so cheap and feel. You pick up the Les Paul and it's heavy,
Right.
and it means something. It really means business. And then I found that I was doing things that I never dreamed I could.
Something.
Well, just general things chords were a bit of a pain in the ass because the Fender was nice. You could grip it like a weapon and really chunk out the chord. But when you came to the more subtle stuff, it wasn't there. There was just no sustain.
Right.
And you kind of fluffed up a few runs. But on the Les Paul, you wouldn't. You'd fluff it because you'd attempt something really hard.
Right.
But you knew damn well with a bit of practice you'd get it. And then after a while, I got so used to the Les Paul, there was no turning back. I picked up the Fender and thought, shit, how the hell am I going to play this thing?
When did you first start using Marshalls?
Well, I didn't really care what I plugged into, as long as I could be heard. I wasn't after a lot of volume. And I used to ask a lot of other groups and roadies what trouble they'd had with their, do they have trouble with the amps blowing up every 5 minutes? And then all the unanimous vote seems to be Marshall. Gotta have Marshall.
Did you use any boosters or anything with the Jeff Beck group?
Any what?
Boosters or
No, there wasn't boosters around anything. I had a colour sound fuzz or something. Tone Bender it was called.
Right. When did you first start playing slide?
In the Yardbirds. Elmore James thing we used to do. I Done Wrong it was called. And that was just fun to play. But I never tuned the guitar to a chord. It would just open.
Right. Is there any reason?
Yeah, because it meant changing over guitars, and I thought that looked terrible on stage, watching a guy change over guitar. I used to just like to stand there after a number and look cool. I didn't want to have to do all this sort of toiletry, changing. And
I'm sorry.
that's okay. What were we going to say?
I was just going to say, do you think that, when you got your own group together, that you were able to play more free than you were with the Yardbirds?
Yeah, but I had so much freedom, I didn't know what to do with it. In the Yardbirds, it was kind of organised. The other 4 members of the group always had some ideas for cooking, whether I liked them or not, they were valid ideas. And that's probably where I played the most constructive playing, really, most inventive. Now I'm just perfecting my technique, really. I'm not really going with anything.
Because the reason I asked,
When you're done with that conversation,
did you ever consciously try to do any theatrics on stage?
well, I never wanted to work something out before. I thought, well, while I'm playing, I've got to move. So let's see if I can roll it all into one without actually, working at it.
Right.
And I used to just sort of do little steps and stuff like that, and stuff that wouldn't bother me while I was playing.
Right.
I'd have a little tiny part of my brain working on the stage act, but 99.5% would be working on the thing, on the guitar playing. I used to, we used to do some outrageous thing. Head over heels, and one time I put the guitar down like that with the head facing downwards, and I spun round on it. And it was the best thing I've ever done. I'd go on the guitar like that, and I'd spun right round like that. And it just came off. You know how things just some when you throw a tennis ball and it sticks between the bars of a railing?
Right.
You couldn't do it if you tried
Right.
in a million years.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, we got bad reviews, man. They said if Beck was to concentrate more on playing than theatrics, like a gymnasium lesson, gymnastic lesson.
I heard things where you take a guitar and kind of throw it up the audience and play up what was going out and things.
Oh no, I never got in that habit.
Yeah.
Really. I always keep my guitar to myself.
Does it bother you, or do you find it a compliment? Some people consider you, the greatest rock guitarist ever play. Do you feel that you have to constantly try to be creative and inventive? What
Well,
you're
it's
doing?
nice to, it's nice to be on the move. But I don't worry because, well, I've got a little bit of time behind me, 6 years of playing, in front of people. And I just had to, I've got that amount of time to look at, you know what I'm saying? It's not as though I've got to worry, hey, I've just broken in last week, and I've got to worry, the more time I've got behind me, the better the better I can judge my own progression, or digression, or whatever you call it.
Do you consider yourself, or what do you think is a flash guitarist?
I do.
Oh, absolutely, why not?
Sure. You like to play the main message about having other people do it. I'm kind of the same way too. I like to be the only person.
No, that's wrong. I hope you haven't got that idea, because
Oh, I read that somewhere. That's why I
no, man, if somebody listens to it like that, then they're not mature enough to understand what
No,
I'm
I never
doing.
meant it as trying to play as much as you can in a short time.
No.
I meant just the whole feeling, as opposed to a...
Well, I like to play. I don't like to try and baffle people. If people, if chicks are going to stand there and go, huh? Look at each other, what? I'm wasting my time. I want to play notes and stuff and chord construction that they'll understand. I mean, if you're going to hit a chord with like a heavy discord, it may be painful for somebody to listen to. So I've tried to kind of incorporate dazzling playing at the same time, make it commercial. Because I remember Les Paul used to just play me, and he used to just tingle me all over.
I'm telling you, but it's a great player.
Oh, nobody talks about it now. But I can understand Mahavishnu, because they've done what I wanted to do, really.
Huh?
Yeah, McLaughlin's far more technically knowledgeable. I mean, I don't know half what he knows. I don't know chords. I mean, I just never had to worry about those kind of chords, because they never really they weren't usable. A chord like that, I mean, it's great. I love it. But I mean, I just forgot all about those kind of chords. But when it came to sort of like this, that was good enough. People would understand it and identify it, but they couldn't get off on a sort of all that sort of melodic stuff, all the discordant stuff.
Can I see the guitar for a second? Let me McLaughlin. It's kind of a strange thing. I think McLaughlin and Europe is about the two top.
You're wrong, because McLaughlin would never be seen. He wouldn't come and watch me. I can tell you that now, because I just have a good knowledge of what's going on in people's heads. I'm I've got a strong telepathy.
Well, your two styles are what I like personally.
Oh well, that's cool. That's cool. But streets ahead.
Did you ever see Rosen?
Yeah. Sorry, I never actually saw him play. I got so close to him. I saw him on stage tuning up, messing around, getting ready for a sound check, and I had to leave the place. But I've got his album, and some parts of it are just sensational, and others I just don't like.
Yeah.
I don't like when he starts preaching and starts talking, about God and all this. I mean, that's cool. What a nice guy.
Yeah. His technique is very tasty. Oh,
He's got very good technique.
The second Jeff Beck that you went back to Fenders with tension,
Yeah.
stress.
Yeah, that was a problem. That the boys wanted me to get a guitar, because I was always complaining the Fender was going out of tune. The Fender was smashed in 4 places, the one I was using, the brown one. It was split right down the back, and they had to glue it together and put some dowel rod through it and pin it and all the rest. And it just wouldn't stay in tune. One jerk on that lever and it would just all go out of tune.
Right.
But some of them do stay in tune good.
Yeah.
All of them, I find very, very.
Not all. It depends how you've got it strung up. If you've got really good new strings, settled in strings that are strong, they'll stay in tune. If you've got very cheap brand strings that stretch all over the place, you're going to put it out of tune in no time.
Were you using boosters and stuff with the strap?
Yeah,
Like,
you had to, because it was too thin.
what kind of things were you using?
The sound was too thin. What kind of booster?
Yeah, you were like...
Just a colour sound. That almost doubled the volume.
Yeah, really sharp.
It not only doubled the volume, it put more body into it.
I would leave me on to the
Yeah, I've got to do that to mine. But it's a very tricky job because I mean spot welded. There's tuning. Do you? I got my guitar apart at a concert. It was some college was playing it, and I got there an hour early. Took the strings and the bridge off. Got the pickups just about ready to take the covers off, and I couldn't get them off. And I got one off, and then I couldn't get the other one off. And I was just halfway, and the kids would say, "Okay, 10 minutes, screw it, bolt it all back together, quick."
Why did you put the covers off?
Why?
Yeah. Did somebody turn you on to that?
Yeah, no, I just thought, what's under there, and I left them off. I wanted to see what was under there, and I didn't have time to put them back on anyway, and the sound was amazing, just more sustained.
That's what I noticed too. Were yours half white or all white?
I don't know. The cover's still on.
Oh no, originally.
Originally, there were one was black and one was white, and it was weird.
How many Summer First Calls have you had?
2. The first one I've still got, but it's not sunburst. I stripped that off because why?
It's amazing.
I know everyone thinks I'm crazy, but they had a beautiful white veneer underneath, and they made them in a white veneer. A real early ones were made in white veneer.
57.
Yeah, that's right. This is what this one, and they must have used the same guitar, the same wood and everything, just sunburst it. So, and it was getting really bashed up, you know, there was beer all over it, and just, all blood caked in down the side, it was just shit, you know, scratched. So I put some paint stripper on it, and it looked so beautiful underneath, white. And, what's the matter? Oh dear.
Do you think the Summer First Calls good?
For my money, yeah. Some people like Barney Kessel model Gibson. But it's according to your taste. I mean, it's like an expensive car, you know. Some people like, you know, Cobra. Some people like, you know, Jag. You know.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Well, those Model S calls have a very good sound, but they have one sound, whereas the Stratocaster's got a clean sound that you can have. And you've got the Toby sound as well.
Yeah.
And it's more comfortable.
Well, this one.
Yeah, the relief contours.
Yeah, but I don't like the comfort, you know. I mean, sometimes it's nice to have a weight around your neck.
You like
battle
kind of
with it.
brassy kind of?
Yeah.
Do you like your action high?
Fairly high, yeah.
Really high? You find that it gives a better tone, or you just like
It's just playing whatever you're playing desires. I mean, you know, sometimes people want to lower the action. I mean, it's nice to have 2 guitars, like one at home with a real high action that's almost unbelievably high, and you practice on it, and you just sit there and you noddle around with it for ages, and then you play some good shit, you know. In fact, I used to have a regularly strung guitar and bend the string, you know.
What kind of strings?
I don't know. We just buy them by the gross. Wherever town we're in, if we're running low, then Magnet or Allen will just run out and buy dozens of strings.
Try some of the Acquisto strings. They're spring, they stay in tune really good, they last long. The Acquisto gave me a couple sets of them while I was back in here. He's Dan Douglas with Tennis, you know? And he's making the finest carpet towel in the world. And these strings, I think, are going to really...
Well, the Jeff Beck group was only the second tour. That's the Jeff Beck group with Rod, and it's just a 4-piece with Ron Wood and Nick Weller. And lo and behold, right out of the blue, we got this phone call from Nick Hopkins who said he wouldn't mind coming on the road. And he said, I want a trial period of like 3 weeks, and if I don't like it, I want to be able to get out. Sure, you know. And it went so good, he wanted to stay. And then, just at the time we started.
I'm sorry.
Just at the time when things really started to get constructive, and I began to really use the piano as it should be used. You know, playing more than just honky-tonk rubbish.
Right.
There was this great sort of parting of the ways bag, you know, like bad vibes towards each other. And I just said, okay, that's it, wind it up.
What was Nicky doing? Was he doing any work when Peter called you?
Was he doing any work? No, only sessions.
The session.
Yeah, and I don't know. I still can't understand why he left it all, because he's such a 9 to 5 sort of face, you know, briefcase and you know, straight clothes and everything. You know, he's absolutely complete ordinary pianist.
He was just here a little bit ago.
And I introduced him to that whole San Francisco thing, you know. Yeah, well, because when we played San Francisco, you know, he said, "Wow, this is something else, this place." And I knew, I could see by the look in his eye that he had other things in mind. You know, and then I had the arguments with the other boys in the group.
How long had the Jeff Beck group been together before the idea of Truth came up?
A year.
A year.
Yeah. And then we decided it was about time we recorded some of the rubbish we were playing on stage.
Was the album made up primarily of stuff that you'd been doing live?
Yeah. We used to have fun because we didn't have any obligation to anybody. Didn't have an album, we could play what the hell we wanted. And that was a really good period for me anyway. It's a hard thing to get back, you know, once you've had it. Because I couldn't go anywhere and play without somebody going, you know, play so-and-so, play, unless I put a disguise on.
It's been hard to live that down?
Live it down?
Yeah.
Well, not really. I never attempted to sort of go out and, you know, do things on a smaller scale anymore. You don't. You just naturally think upwards.
How did you first meet Mickey Mouse?
I needed a manager, and I got both. I need a manager and a producer, and I got both in one evil package. And I shouldn't have really signed the deal, because I'd have done just as well without him. He was alright. He can produce a record, but now it's too late for him to realise where the music is. You know, at that time he thought he ruled everything. He had 6 records in the top 10, you know. And who was I to turn around and say, you don't know what you're talking about? But now he realises I did, you know, have a little insight into what might come about. And he was still messing around with Donovan. I mean, not Donovan, no, it was a bad example. Who was that other thing? Lulu. And people like them, you know. There's absolutely no connection with me at all.
Is he one of the reasons for the first Jeff Beck group breaking up?
I would say, yeah. You know, and the management weren't there when you needed them. There was great holes in all the papers, you know, you couldn't really see what was. And that was a time when money started to get really significant. You know, you weren't any longer working for $100 a night. You were talking about $3,000 a show, which was a lot of money. You know, and when that happened, I mean, you can imagine after working for like 8 years on the road, and then all of a sudden $3,000 figures appear. We're starting to get at each other, and Rod was saying, "Where's all the fucking bread?" And I was saying, "Oh, I ain't got it." And then he'd see me buy a car, and he swore to God that I bought the car with his money.
Yeah.
I must pay him back sometime.
How long after you finished Truth, did you start working on Beckola?
Oh, sometime. In fact, we were so green about material here, you know, about product, rather. We just thought we could tour for about 6 months on one album. And then we did the 3rd tour, and the promoters were saying, "Where's the product, man? You know, I've got a full auditorium waiting to hear some new product." And I really listened to that man. You know, I forget who it was now. And we got the fuck home and made another album quick. And that's why Truth is such a bad, Beckola is such a rough album. You know.
Do you think it was?
Yeah. I mean, it's got violence and everything in it, because we were violent sort of at that time. But it really doesn't have much to say musically.
Where was Blues Deluxe recorded?
In the studio.
Oh, was?
Yeah, I faked that. Oh, it was good fun. We were fooling around waiting for people to turn up for the session. You know, Rod was usually late, and I happened to be early this particular occasion. And we were messing around with sound effects records and tapes. And there was this tape with audience presence written on it, and I thought, wow. And I played it, and the sound of the dead tape was going, and all of a sudden, it felt like you were sitting in a room with about 600 people in it. In stereo, it was just amazing, and there was sort of papers rustling, and people, you know, it was just. And we put that behind the tape, and just added a bit of the Beatles reception at the Wembley Empire Hall, Wembley. If you listen to the end of the thing, you'll just hear the applause get crescendo. If you listen really good, you can tell it's a real huge crowd, about 80,000 people. It was just one of our little private jokes.
What prompted Greensleeves?
Oh, it was just an idle mess around in the studio while I was waiting for Mickey. We recorded it. Why not? It was the vital last track of the album, Nobody could think what to play, I just played it. That's why there was all the plinking and plonking and bad notes in it.
Have you ever done anything classical before that?
No. I tried, I used to know this guy, where was he from? Wasn't Spanish, Portuguese guitarist. And he was coming on fine, he had a good style. Never pursued it, and I learned as much as he did, and when he stopped learning, I just quit the idea of following him. I never really played any classical pieces from beginning to end. Too difficult.
Would you have liked to record the live album, the first Jeff Beck group?
I would have done, yeah.
Was there ever any live material recorded that might in the can somewhere?
No, I really don't know. I've only got some cheap cassettes that people have handed me, which couldn't be used. Quality's not good enough.
What's your relation now with Nicky and Rod? Do you see him or talk to him?
I haven't seen him for months. You don't see stars, they go away to a castle in the sky, don't they? When they finish the gig. I don't know.
If Rod Stewart ever left the Faces and you were free, would you like to work with him again?
No.
No.
What would be the purpose of it?
In
2 years was a long time working with the same guys. And really, it would just be a sort of 1973 version of what was going on then. Nothing new. I can't see it, but it would change that much. Or have any sort of real object.
What did you? Was one of the reasons for breaking up the Jeff Beck group that you wanted to get with Tim and Carmen?
Yeah, I had that in the back of my mind. But I really wanted an English band,
You did.
I didn't want to join up with two Americans. Not because of, I don't know, the reasons of the many, complications. But I mean, these two are the nearest I could class as English, being Americans. You know what I mean? They understand the way I talk. I don't have to keep repeating myself. And they understand all my sort of English, don't they?
Yeah, that's right.
I use backslang and all the rest of it, and I can feel at home with them. Whereas a lot of Americans I talk to are really good players, and I say, what did he say? No, I could. It makes me feel more at home, and people that understand what I'm trying to say.
So you were going to get with them, and then there was the accident, and when you got done, they were in Cactus.
Yeah.
And then you got together, second Jeff Beck group.
With Bob Tension.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Where'd you find those?
I just hunted all over England. Got into some very ugly scenes where I thought I'd got the line up, sewn up, and then somebody better would come along. And I just promised the job to them, and I had to kick them out, and in favour of it's ruthless, this business. It's been done to me enough times.
Has it?
Yeah, when I first started playing. They wanted a straightforward guitar player with a suit and a tie. They wanted possibly a few dance steps thrown in.
Who's that with? Yardbirds?
Oh God, no! Before then.
When you heard Cozy Paul play, you said that he was the only drum that you'd heard so far that knew how to use double basses.
Yeah.
After hearing Carmen, what do you think?
Oh wow, well, it's totally different. Carmine's more powerful and more experienced. I mean, with the exception of Carmine, that's what I was talking about. I didn't say. What did I say? That Cozy Powell was the only British bass drummer that you knew how to use. Because there was people like Nigel Olsson with this great flamboyant kit, and never used more than one drum at a time.
You did a little bit of writing on Beckola, and then all of a sudden on Rough and Ready, there's a lot of original compositions.
No, they weren't my compositions.
They weren't.
That was just that was my publishing name. You know, the tunes were published under one name for simplicity's sake, really.
I see.
Because Max was under contract to someone else, and I think Clive was under contract to another publisher, and if they'd seen their names under the titles of the song, they'd have been in trouble. We all chipped in on that song. I don't write songs, I just write licks, and I supply drum rhythms, sometimes for Carmine. An idea or two, he just enlarge on, you know.
When you got the second Beck group together, did you have an idea that you wanted to be more of a formal, stylized type of group as opposed to...
No, I just wanted to get back into playing.
You did?
Yeah, that's all. Just wanted to sniff out the business with a reasonably competent band, you know. That's what I did.
How long were you with the second Beck group?
Well, no, it was just 15 months.
Yeah, but about a year's worth of gigging. The rest of the time I just spent messing around. You know.
6 months.
Really? Is that all?
6 months before you...
6 months worth of jobs.
There was like 4 months to go before that period.
Sorting out PAs and, you know, general, you know,
Cutting out albums.
getting things right.
Was Rough and Ready the first album you produced?
No, it's the truth. Just don't say that on a label, though. Yeah. Mickey Most was in France when that was made. And he came back and just did the stereo mix on a couple of the tracks. Because I was having problems splitting up the instruments, and he came in. And Peter Grant was there, and he was supervising the session. But he didn't have anything to do with production.
What do you see as the role of a producer?
Really, in the old days, a producer, I used to think of a producer as somebody getting a bunch of musicians together and dragging some sense out of them. You know, putting something meaningful down on disc. But now, I mean, it doesn't mean that. You know, you could get a producer in the old days who'd get a bunch of incompetent players and make a really great record. But now it's more true in the sense of the word producer, you know what I mean? They come along and they take the ideas and put them together.
Yeah.
Instead of just taking a bunch of idiots and telling them what to do. They're using the artistry from each member of the band and making it sort of a commercial proposition.
Were you pleased with Rough and Ready and the Jeff Becky's album?
No, I hated the first one.
Did you?
I loved the second one. At the time of mastering, I thought, wow, this is all right, you know. And then, you know, a couple of weeks after hearing other records, and I went back and heard that, and I thought, oh no, missed again.
What was wrong with it?
A lot of the phrasing and the singing wasn't what I had in mind, and the general quality of the recording wasn't what I had in mind. It was all right, but it was a bit disappointing. I wanted some raw stacks stuff, and it was just very smooth the way it came out.
Whatever your goals were with the second Jeff Beck, do you think you accomplished them in that short of a time? I mean,
I reckon I.
Was it 9 months?
Obviously by now, you know, who can say what kind of standard and what kind of material will be turning out? Maybe outrageous, you know. But it's just one of those things that one couldn't afford to do. Take a chance with. I couldn't afford to see my audiences getting disinterested. You know, however unloyal it would be to break the group up and all this. I've got to think about myself, you know. And if I'm annoying or upsetting my following that's been there for the last 6 years, you know, something's wrong. I mean, if I'd just been in this business for 6 months, I wouldn't give a shit. But, you know, my sort of following seems to get very, very steadily bigger. I don't know. It hasn't got smaller anyway, so I sort of respect that fact, and you know.
So you're doing something right then?
So I'm what?
You're doing something right?
Well, I don't know.
After leaving the second Jeff Beck group, Tim and Carmine were free from Cactus? Or how did you start, you know, negotiations with them?
Well, can you shut that for a minute?
Yeah.
The record world, okay.
How did you first get together together with Jimmy Carmen. You did a Coca-Cola commercial?
Yeah, that's the story. Well, you know the story.
Well, I just heard a little bit.
Yeah, I was off in New York for a couple of days, and Vinny, their guitar player, Trudge's guitar player, was sick, and I thought they wanted me to go along there and play my style because of my style, and it was only because Vinny was sick. I'll show you. I told you that.
Had you played some performances with them, with the Fudge on the bill and Jeff Beck group?
Yeah, I think a little while after that I did.
After that.
Yeah, we did the Singer Bowl in New York. And it was '69, and that was the time Led Zeppelin was just forming. They just had their first album released.
Right.
And there was Edwin Hawkins singers, them, Fudge, and us. And 10 years after. Fuck, who was top of the bill? Oh, the Fudge were top of the bill.
Were they?
And it was one of those riotous sort of days, you know. Everyone's energy level was 100%, and we were throwing things at each other on stage. I threw a mug of orange juice at Alvin Lee, and it's all stuck all over his guitar. It was just one of those animal things. You know. Three English groups at the same place has to add up to trouble, you know. And we had great fun. Fudge didn't do that well on that particular occasion, and they were really down when they came off stage because all this rioting and all, like Robert Plant, Jimmy Page and Bonham came on the stage at the end of our act. And Stewart and Planty were singing the blues together, and I was playing the duet thing with Page. But it wasn't that well organised. So Page's guitar was like a semitone out of tune. It was my guitar he was borrowing, and it was a Telecaster that had been lying in his case for about a year as a spare, and I never actually used it as a spare, and it got dust all over it. And he quickly tuned it up, and it just kept going out of tune. The kids went wild over it. Yeah, it was absolutely. And the Fudge just, when they came off, you know, people weren't really into them anymore.
Did you talk to them afterwards?
Yeah. Well, what made it worse for them was that all their chicks left them on that particular night. And it was a pretty ugly scene. I went back to the hotel. And a couple of days, well, it was about a week later, we were out on the road again. I got a call from Tim and Carmine. Hey, you want a bass player and drummer? And I said, yeah, but I didn't know it was them. You know, I said, well, yeah, I'm always looking for new players. No, and they said, well, it's us. Can we come over? I said, you're kidding. Come on. And it sounded a really good idea. But I didn't want to sort of do it that quick because it was being too obvious to the public what was going on. The Fudge were on the wane, and they were split up, and I didn't want to be associated with people that were on the wane. You know, quite understandably. I mean, fuck it, you know, it's business, you know. And I left it for a while, let things simmer, and you know, I just let things take their natural course, and here we are, you know.
I think you said once that when you were thinking of getting together with the Appice brother that you wanted a band to compete with Led Zeppelin.
Maybe I said that. I don't know.
Was that ever in your mind?
No, I don't recollect saying that. Maybe I implied that. I really didn't mean it. Because there's no one that can compete with him. Really. It just once they'd been elevated and sort of blown up to the size, half the size they are now, that was enough. I mean, nobody could get near them because the image becomes stronger than the music, and then the music comes up to the level of the image, and then you're off. You're on a home run, and therefore there's no way, unless it happens to us, which it won't, because I've been around too long.
Were there original plans? I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was just saying that I'm enjoying what I'm playing, and you know the album's doing well, so I'm just accepting the fate or the good fortune that comes my way.
If Beck Bogart nephew, is it a PC?
Appice, A-double-P, Appice.
That's what I thought. Beck Bogart and Appice went through it of Led Zeppelin. Do you think, could you handle that? I mean,
no. That's partly the reason why I've always got off the train when
exactly.
You know, just before, because I could see the old band with Stewart and that was going to be big.
I can see that. Too.
Because you know, Woodstock, for example. I mean, there was a whole great hubbub about it. You know, like everybody was ringing me up. I mean, I had 100 phone calls every day saying.
You were asked to play Woodstock?
Yeah, we were on. It was on our date list on that very tour. And about a week before Woodstock, it was finished. But nobody really knew what Woodstock was going to be like. You know, if I said to you, there's going to be a big festival down the road in about half an hour, you'd say, yeah, okay, and you walk down and you find 50 million people down there.
There are no regrets for not being there?
No, not really. You know, it would have been nice to get on film and sit next to your chick in the cinema and say, that's me. but I think films are very they can make you very dated, you know. I think the less recorded stuff and less filmed stuff of me are the better I like it, really. It's like a photograph. I mean, you know, you pick up a photograph a year old and you go, wow, and you throw it away. I very rarely look back on stuff that I've appeared in or recorded and really like it.
Were the original plans to have Rod Stewart as vocalist?
They weren't my plans.
But they weren't?
No, because I really just, I don't know, I just didn't have any idea about using Rod at all. It wasn't because he wouldn't have worked. It wasn't because I didn't like him so much. It was the fact that it wouldn't have fitted in with the plans that the group had, the musical policy I had in mind. And the other, well, I could see a singer was like twice as wild as Rod for a start. You know, Rod was kind of content to strut around the stage. You know, and he had a good voice. I mean, maybe it would have been good. I don't know, but what with the personality clashes, I couldn't see it. Couldn't see it working out, and especially with a heavy rhythm section like that. He wouldn't have been up front. He wouldn't have been able to be the lead singer anymore. You know? He didn't like the idea of that. And the other two wanted him, but you know, Carmine and Tim thought it would be a great idea. But then they didn't really know the whole story behind, you know, my feelings in the band at that time.
Right. How did you had Kim Milford in the band for a little bit, and also Max Middleton.
Yeah.
They didn't last too long.
No. It was a bad mistake. I heard Kim singing in the studio, and he looked fairly good, you know, and he could sing really good, really well. And then on stage, he just completely went apart. I thought he wasn't adequate enough, and started shaking around doing a go-go girl act. And kids were just fucking so furious that he was ruining the whole thing, and he just had to go, you know.
Did you ever play any live dates with him? With those
2 or 3, yeah. And then we got Bobby back. I had to get Bobby back. And thank God he wasn't uptight about the sacking in the first place. He just came back. You know, anytime you want to help out, I'll be here. That's the sort of guy he is, you know. You give the guy the sack and ask him back in the band the next day.
How long? He wasn't in for very long either.
No. He was there for about 9 months.
Oh, is it?
9 months or so.
Did you come over here with him?
Yeah, we did a short tour. We did the Palladium last time.
Yeah, I was back in England.
Yeah.
I'm waiting to get a list.
Can I have a refill then?
I reckon about 28.5.
Have there been any statements made, or were you ready for statements being made to the fact that Beck, Boker, and Nash would be successors to Cream, try to pick up?
No, well, people are nauseating in that respect because they display their musical ignorance by saying things like that immediately, because there's absolutely no similarity whatsoever.
Just the fact that you were a trio. And
that's it, yeah, and because I came from Eric's era, you
exactly.
know. I mean, maybe 1 or 2 little lines just border on it, but God, you think how many bands do sound exactly the same. I think that this band will, in about a year's time, have a sound all of its own. Because if it takes off right and the vibe is right, and people accept it, and like give me a break from all this bad publicity, maybe I'll get the enthusiasm and the balls to come out and do something worthwhile again. But people are ruthless.
Are they?
Oh, in this business. And they'll tear you apart and eat you for breakfast. Oh yeah. You know, these cynical critics that come around, and they've got all the licks. They're just frustrated players, I find.
Exactly.
Mostly. You know, the ignorance is just displayed in full flower, most of the time. Like I'm blowing into a tube with water in a bag. I mean, where did they get the water from? It's just a speaker drive unit inside it in the bag, and it's a gimmick thing that was used by Albino Ray in the late 40s. And this cat put me down. He said the only interesting feature about Beck's performance was a weird bag with water in it that was blowing through. Sad. I mean, and all his licks on his report was just like he knew every solitary thing there was to know about music.
And you probably couldn't tune a guitar.
No. But there again, you know, it made no difference to me. It won't, I mean, people, some chicks get a great kick out of, you know, especially if they've been treated badly and blown out of the room. They'd love to cut out bad reviews and send them to you. Say, hi, I liked your performance, but he didn't. You know, it's just, this is a sort of Hollywood film scene, but with rock and roll instead of film. It's rock and roll game.
I think you said once that you thought that music reached its height with Cream and Hendrix.
No, I reckon so. That bag of music, you know, that very, very sort of...
Technically?
Yeah. But they, also group-wise, they came together and gelled beautifully together. Lovely stuff. I just wish it was all back again in a way, you know.
Did you ever meet Hendrix?
Oh yeah, all the time. I knew him very well. Yeah, I played with him. The best time I had was when the Jeff Beck group was just a little bit of a name in New York. And we were playing 6 nights on the trot in a scene club. And Hendrix would be there every night and just wait patiently to the end of our set, and then we could really start playing, you know. And old Rod would go and pull all the chickies, and we'd stay at home and play. And then he played Bolero one night and blew my mind completely. He played it left-handed on a right-handed guitar. And I played rhythm, and I played Foxy Lady and blew him out. That was heavy, because there was just about 15 or 20 people in the club, and you could see the look in their eye. They were just in utopia, you know, because Hendrix was just playing like you'd never heard. And I was just playing second guitar to him most of the time, but it was really enjoyable.
Are there certain performances that you had, either with the first Jeff Beck group or the second Jeff Beck group, that you remember, or things before you were even playing professionally?
No, the
things
recent...
especially good or bad?
You mean with the Rod Stewart band?
Or even with...
I remember 1 or 2 very good nights with that band, where the energy was popping, and it wasn't contrived jamming. You know, it was very, very sort of spontaneous, and things were just clicking all the time. It was just walk, come off stage and you go straight to bed. You know, don't need to do anything else. But those gigs are few and far between. And the other band was so paranoid about coming back on the scene, could never enjoy the gigs really. People were very nice and clapped and all that, but no magic really. Except for Toronto, for some weird reason. Toronto just swallowed the band hook, line and sinker. You know, Max was just... Everybody says, "Where's Max?" And you know, really, you know, because he had this Bill Evans type piano, you know, going, and they just love all that. And they like Bobby, you know. That band was big in Toronto, but I can't live on Toronto's money.
I remember the first time I saw the Jeff Beck with Rod Stewart was at the Shrine here, like 10 years after Community Blues.
Yeah.
Was there any kind of a contest going on between you now
and Alvin?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
There was the management or agency used to insist on billing us together everywhere, and I didn't like that because they were supporting us most of the time for the early part of their career, because they were a new band, you know, and it just used to bug me because he was doing my job, you know, before I did it. However indifferent, however samey or however different it was, he was a featured guitar player, right, in a band much the same as ours. And he'd do yards and yards of soloing, you know, and get all the little kids running around all over the place. And by the time I came on, you know, the energy level was up and gone. So in that respect, it was, you know, farcical supporting it. And I used to get bugged by it, and that's why I used to one night I threw the Orange at him, but everyone was throwing things at everybody that night. But there wasn't any contest because he didn't play like I play at all. He was very fluent and very speedy, but nothing. His phrase choice, you know, I know people think the same. No 2 people play the same.
What was it like working at Chess Studios?
Oh, well, we had a soldering iron and a pair of pliers and an instruction manual on how to fix a 16-track grate. But oh, it was so. I mean, a funky studio is funky, but this one was held together with sellotape. I think they'd moved. I think Chess Records.
What made you want to record Chess?
With Carmine in the band, we had to think instantly about how we're going to get him recorded. Otherwise, you might as well just use any drummer, you know. If you're going to get the sound across, let's think about a place that could cope with it. And the only place I could think of that had a beefy drum sound was Chess Records. Because I listen to all the production and I'm very critical about things, like drum sound. I haven't ever got a good drum sound. Beck had a good drum sound. If you screw that up real loud in the car stereo, it's there. But mixed is terrible. But I heard about 5 or 6 completely different artists on the Chess label. And they all had that beefy drum sound. I thought, well, this can't be an accident. There must be something going there. And sure enough, we got there. The drum sounds are just unbelievable. It's an old wooden room, and the drums have a good response. They record real well. Even when you play as loud as he does, you can still get it.
You had problems with bass lines?
Yeah, the bass was very watery and was flowing all around the room. Once you hit the bass string, you couldn't hear the drums at all. It was just completely blotted out. So there was no rapport in the studio. There was no telepathy because I couldn't hear what was going on. I couldn't even tell whether I was in tune. It just somehow drummed on my earlobes. My eardrums. I couldn't. So we'd go back and hear it. And the playback room was just funky as hell, bits of wire hanging around. But the sound was there, so we decided to stick it out and work on it. Tim had a special amp built to cope with the bass problem. And it worked. And we strengthened up some of the weak lines in LA. We came here and I think he overdubbed a couple of things. But I think we'll probably go back there again. I don't want to go back to Chicago, no way. I hate it. But Carmine is sort of adamant about going back to record there. Yeah. Unless somebody can come up with and drag him down to a studio. Unless they can drag him physically down and say, I can get you that drum sound, and then do it, he won't be interested.
Save you tomorrow. Yeah, I will. You did the album in a real short time.
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah. Well, partly because we all hated Chicago so bad, we want to get.
He didn't get out. Was it hard to find material and write material?
Sorry?
Was it hard to find and write material for the band?
Yeah, because especially with people breathing down their neck waiting to hear the first album, it can get really tough. But we went away to Devon in England for a while to just write some stuff, and we should have stayed down there longer. But in 3 days, we had half the album together. That's where all those songs were written, in this little house. And maybe one day we'll go back down there and stay a bit longer, because it's a nice place to play.
I blackmailed them again to the Oval.
You haven't. We're playing the Oval.
No, I'm saying I blackmailed you to come up from Devon to the Oval.
Yeah.
They didn't know when they came up whether they were going to do a 5-piece thing or a 3-piece thing.
No.
And we couldn't get hold of one of them, so we had to do a trio.
Was most of the material collaboration between the three of you?
Yeah. Well, me and Carmine, but Tim was always ready to listen to an idea. He really doesn't care about writing too much. He just wants to see what's going on, and he'll play his ass off when he knows the tune. That's the way I like it.
Would you give him the melody and rhythm track, and would he play?
Yeah, yeah. He just learned the chord exactly what to play. I think I'd prefer it if those two wrote a song and gave it to me.
Would you ever want to add another guitarist, or maybe a pianist to the group?
Maybe, but that ain't in the immediate plans, If it is, if we do add a piano, it'll be
Beck?
no, I'm afraid not, because he's too mellow. Every chord he hits is a masterpiece. It's the right for him, but he can take a funky riff of mine and just completely change it round to sound like a bossa nova. Really. His ear just, you say, give me an A, and he'll give you an A flat and 13th and not
Inverted and everything.
yeah, inverted. At least for the stuff I'm playing now, he wouldn't be any good. We need a piano player probably that didn't even sound, unless you're really sharp, you probably wouldn't even know he was there. You need a real tight piano player that just chops chords in between me and Carmine and Tim,
Right.
and sings. I wouldn't have anybody that couldn't sing, because what we're lacking really is a good vocalist, I suppose. If anything, is that. I don't care. I get off on Carmine singing. Just it's got to improve over the years. If you look at it as a long-term thing, in about 2 years, his voice will be as good as anyone else I can think of in this field.
Would you like to sing some more?
Yeah, but I need the right song, and I need it released, and it has to be a hit, and I know where I am. You can't just suddenly expect me to start singing right out of the blue without any encouragement, any indication or direction of what I'm supposed to be doing. Because my voice, I haven't sung properly. I only just do one number every night, and I even forget the lines on that.
How'd you meet up with Stevie Wonder?
Well, we did one of his tunes on an album, and somebody told him about it. I heard through the grapevine that somebody told him that we'd done it, and still I want to hear it. And I think he liked the way we played it or something. And then when it came around for material, I said, well, Stevie's got all the material sewn up. If we took one of his songs before he records it, if he wants to give it to us, great, then we wouldn't be influenced too much by him, if he just played us a demo. And then these guys said, okay, yeah, we'll fix it up. And it was a whole load of bullshit, They told him that I wanted to play on his album, and they didn't say anything about the records, that I wanted. And when we met, he said, hey, and I don't think he really knew what the scene was, do you? He just thought I was there in admiration for him and wanted to desperately, like hell, play on his album. And all I wanted was just a couple of licks and a few words to get off on, He didn't know that. It was obvious, because when we started talking about him writing a song for us, he just didn't know what we were talking about half the time. Anyway, he said, alright, how about this? And came out with a few lines of Superstition. And then we got off on it like mad, we recorded it. And then the idea was that we would release it together, put it out. Stevie Wonder, Jeff Beck group, single. And we cut it. No, Motown said, you've got to put it out yourself, Stevie, otherwise, you're crazy. And we did. That was it. And I walked out of the studio and Stevie said, oh, I thought you were going to play some of your shit on my record. By that time, I was so confused I didn't really want to do anything, but I played on it, on one of his tracks.
Just played one?
I think there's one and maybe a little bit of rhythm guitar on another one that they left in.
Are there any plans for your next album?
Yeah. In the last week I've got a few ideas. It's taking about the same shape as the first album in terms of contributions to the album. I've got about the same amount of ideas that I had on the previous album. So I reckon about a month's time we'll start figuring it out. But the energy level is higher on the road. The ideas are popping. And it's the art of it is to keep the good ideas and get rid of the junk.
Were you completely pleased with Beck broken up to the album?
No, I'm never pleased with albums.
What would you have done different?
Well, I probably wouldn't have done half the songs that were on there. I'd like to have had some more, what shall we say, noteworthy materials. I mean, everybody knows it, the way I play, and you know, I can get off on runs and stuff. I'm busy playing, but I mean, they don't mean anything. The song doesn't mean anything. A lot of the songs on there are just examples of sort of frilly playing, snazzy playing, you know, like sharp, tight playing. But I mean, the song itself don't mean shit. We've got to get some songs that really mean something. Like Dr. John has got some nice stuff, and he said he'd write us a couple of tunes. Just some lyrics. All we need are lyrics. We don't need any songs, any melody lines. We'll think of the lines, just the lyrics. A good, strong subject, and we'll do the rest.
Will some of his lyrics be on the next album then? Hopefully.
Maybe. Mind you, you know, if we cut 4 of his tracks, you know, in this game you can never tell what's going to happen. We might say, wow, just had an idea, scrap that and do this. You may find that we shelve half his stuff. I don't know.
I'm sorry.
It's luck of the draw in this game.
Do you see a live album sometime?
Yeah, before I die, probably, sometime.
Do you think a live album would be hard to do? That will have to be kind of
Yeah,
natural.
it would be hard to record, because it's hard enough in the studio to record this band, let alone live.
How's the tour been going here? I think you kind of intimated in article once that you find American kind of a necessary evil.
It is.
And, you really don't like too much of it.
It's a chore, really, touring over here. Sometimes it's a little less tedious than others. But I don't know, I just haven't been brought up to accept the way of life, you know, I can't take it. The girls are so straight, so forward, you know, I mean, there's just no, I don't know,
That's so nice.
I lose all my background when I come here. I can't get my feet on the ground for 1 minute. I'm always being shocked by something, you know. Whereas in England, you turn up, I know where I am, I know how to make conversation with people, and here, it's just 3 or 4 subjects that get talked about all day, and that's it, isn't it? I bet you go down to that coffee shop, and I bet you there's 1 subject, or 2 subjects, sex and music. That's all it is, you know, or maybe films. You know, there's more to life than that.
What was music from Free Creek?
Music from Rip-Offsville. That was a bunch of musicians hyped into playing in the studio where some little fucker had got a recording machine going. Now I was told that they must have planned it like a robbery, because I was in New York for 1 night signing a deal with CBS, and I was looking for a bass player and drummer, and somebody knew that I was looking and sniffing around clubs and that. And I got drunk as a skunk in this club and came out, and this guy said, "Hey, you want to jam with a great bass player and drummer?" I said, "Yeah, alright, where?" I went down to the studio, staggered in the door, guitars all plugged in, and they were sort of faking a recording session. They were sort of like recording something, I don't know what it was. I picked up the guitar, blew 4 or 5 tunes, and they recorded the whole fucking thing. And then they putting it out on the label.
You never got it.
Well, I was holding an audition, really, that's all I was doing. No, really. All I played was a simple lick. It's just like a sort of spadey soul groove I got into. And they've overdubbed some Buddy Rich horns on it, really. Some players from the Buddy Rich band on it. Christ, I couldn't believe it. The lengths that people will go to make an extra few dollars.
Just a couple final questions. You were at a Cactus gig one time, and now this is just things I've read and I'm interested in, and they said that they were going to ask you up on stage to jam.
Yeah.
But that you had left early, and that you told Cozy Powell later that after watching McCarty play that felt he would have blown you off the stage.
That he would have blown me off the stage?
Yeah.
No, I felt that my playing wouldn't have added anything to... It wouldn't have been a sort of worthwhile prospect, you know, getting up there and playing after that, because they'd made so much fucking row. You know, me adding to the situation would have just made it worse.
And one of the things that I've heard about Jeff Beck is that a lot of times you'd stay home to watch a TV show instead of showing up.
Oh, I'd made that as a very sort of dry, ordinary sort of crack, and they took it seriously. Can you dig that? One night they said, why don't you turn up to gigs? And this guy said it in such a sort of meaningful way, as if he was going to give me a smack around the bottom, around the arse. I just said, well, there's always something good on television. You know, it was just a nasty crack that I made about it. And, you know, he took that and printed it in the paper.
Is there anything that I haven't mentioned that you want to talk about?
No, really, that's about it. I think so.
One. It's on.